A lot of times we see students focused on very specific profiles like the equity research, investment banking, fund management. But I believe there are 10 subjects when we start with the level 1 curriculum. And there's a much broader coverage when we look at the curriculum. So what are the different set of roles, diverse work profiles, job profiles, startup, entrepreneurial aspects? So what are the different profiles that a candidate would be able to explore with the CFA exams?
So I think, again, almost anything that is analyzing financial information to be able to make some sort of decision, whether it's are we going to invest in this capital infrastructure project or are we going to invest in that company? What are we as a company looking at in terms of our own efficiency of capital? Anywhere where that kind of activity is going on, you're going to find charter holders.
Hello everyone, my name is Aswini Bajaj. I have graduated in 2012, completed CA, CS, CFA, FRM, CAIA, CIPM, CCRA, CIRA, CIIB, AIM, RV, CFP, and I have been teaching for the last 12 years. I just got my name entered in the World Book of Records. I have been training at almost 140 plus colleges, 30 plus IIMs and IITs, corporate training, consulting, research, a lot of things, but today I'm here to host a session with Margaret Franklin from the CFA Institute, Global CEO, and we want to ask her a lot of questions with regards to the jobs, the role of AI, the industry, how you prepare for the CFA exams, and a lot more. Thank you so much, Margaret, for agreeing to do this. Let's go ahead with the questions right away.
Great, I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Recently, we had a bit of change in terms of introducing the practical skill modules, the PSM as we call it, and that's for levels 1 and 2 in 2024, but level 3 also from 2025 onwards. We do talk about a lot about upskilling in India, per se, when we talk to the recruiters and the industry experts and all, with regards to the lack of skills. So how did, the PSM modules come into existence in the curriculum? And what's the thought behind it, and how is it going to be impacting and helping the students? If you could just shed a little light on it.
Great. Well, these are the most extensive set of changes, enhancements that we've made to the CFA program ever in our history. And we did them actually with extensive research with employers. What were they looking for from candidates? And one of the things that they were distinctly keen on was having candidates that are more job ready. So the practical skills modules, which you referred to, are a key feature of that. And these are 10 to 15 hour digital online models. You're not tested on them, so your candidates won't be tested on them, but you have to complete them to get to the next level or to get your results. The modules for level 1 are financial modeling skills and or Python. Level 2 is research, analysis and writing skills, as well as more advanced Python, and I'm still waiting to hear what we're doing for level 3, but quite excited about those practical skills modules.
Looking forward to the same. So I've been talking to the recruiters and all. So one particular guy from the sell side equity research I was interacting with, and he mentioned about that the guys are able to do the models well, but when it comes to writing report, it becomes a bit of a challenge. And now with the AI and all the chat GPTs and all are taking care of that, I just hope, I'm actually sure that level 2 modules per se, which is about the writing aspect of it, is going to be playing a very, very important role in terms of recruitment and the skill set. So the upskilling becomes very important in the writing skills and using the financial model. In fact, level 1, we've got a chapter on financial modeling introduced. So that's also a very welcome change. I enjoyed teaching that chapter. So that is going to be, the application part is going to be taken care of in the PSM. So
and I think the level 2 research skills really are, well, chat GPT and Copilot and all that can help you write a report. At the end of the day, you do really need to know what are you trying to convey, what's materially important, who's your audience, all those kinds of things. So I'm quite excited about the practical skills modules. The other change that we made was in level 3 to offer pathways. So historically, the CFA program has been traditional portfolio management at level 3, and really that's always been the pathway. We did hear from both candidates and employers that optionality, almost like an elective in that level 3, was deeply valued. And so candidates get the same core program. There's still only one CFA. But in level 3, for half of it, you have the opportunity to choose between portfolio management, private wealth, or private markets. And employers have been really very favorable to that change that we've made.
Glad to hear that, because in CFA level 3, 70% of the curriculum is the same.
Yeah.
And as we had discussed earlier, the pathway would not be mentioned on their CFA charter.
Right.
So it is the one CFA,
Right.
as you mentioned. And with the 3 pathways, of course, it gives a little bit of specialization in the respective areas. Right. And wealth industry is doing very, very well, and the private equity aspect as well. It's really great to see that it's not just portfolio management, but beyond that. And in fact, corporate finance and the other areas. So it covers finance on a very, very broad level.
Yeah, so we've been here in India for this week with many employers, and we've also talked to regulators and others, and it's clear in India that the wealth management business is growing, and you can see the potential for it to grow explosively. So this is where these pathways become really important. However, when we look at our data globally, what we see is that the CFA charter holders are in many parts obviously the investment industry, but more broadly the finance industry. So we see people in corporate strategy, corporate finance, financial planning and analysis, anywhere where there's capital allocation or investing decisions being made, you'll find charter holders, treasury, obviously classic portfolio management, private wealth management increasingly. So I have found for my own career, and I can see it in our data, that it has great utility for myriad job roles.
So when we're looking at asset allocation in India, for example, so a developed nation would have approximately about 20% asset allocation to financial assets. And in India right now, it's somewhere less than 10%. So yes, there's a lot of scope and a lot to discover and explore in the private wealth space. And since we're just talking about your career, so how did finance happen to you, or you chose it, and what was your journey like? I think the students would love to know that.
Well, I have to say I landed in the business accidentally. I came out in the crash of 1987, and the economy had tanked where I was, so it was hard to get a job, and I had a number of jobs and ended up in a role at State Street Global Advisors in a very entry-level job. Everybody who was working around me who had the kind of job I wanted had their CFA charter. So I realized that if I wanted to get ahead, I would need a professional designation, and the CFA program was the most rigorous and globally recognized and the most prestigious. So, back in the early 90s and mid 90s, particularly for a woman, you could only get so far, and having that professional designation made everything for my career. It has continued to serve me throughout the entirety of my career. So, when people see those 3 letters behind you, they have a certain level of respect for it, to say the least. Most people will have somewhere between 4 to 6 career changes over their career life, and never once have I thought that the CFA Charter and CFA Institute didn't have something to offer to me throughout my career to make me skill, reskill, upskill, and certainly a much better professional.
That's glad to hear. That's
and I will say, the reason I stuck with the industry was I thought it would be a lifetime of being very interesting, and 35 years later, I don't think it's been any more interesting than it is right now.
It's actually a pleasure to listen to that, especially you have more number of years of experience than my age. I mean, it's phenomenal, the kind of experience that you've had at that point of time, because today the kind of access we have to information all is tremendous. So at that point of time, making it into finance and all, I can just imagine. It's absolutely commendable.
Great.
So since we're talking about the upskilling, we're talking about the PSM module, there's a very pertinent questions that a lot of students as well as the parents have while deciding their careers for their kids and all. So with AI coming in, artificial intelligence, people have become very skeptical in terms of what the future holds, what the industry holds for them in future, how things are going to be, whether their jobs are going to get redundant. So there's a lot of skepticism around with regards to AI. I remember just scribbling a quote, a thought, and posting it on Instagram. AI will replace you if your I is A. Artificial intelligence will replace you if your intelligence is artificial. So how do you look at it? I mean, how would AI play a role in terms of, for CFA charter holders per se,
Yeah.
in terms of their jobs and career?
So I think a couple of things. Number one, we've done extensive research this last year and will continue to do so on the impact of artificial intelligence on the industry. And right now, it doesn't look like there will be tremendous disruption. What AI can do is certainly take some routine rote activities and do those for you fairly quickly and fairly effectively, and then allow, for instance, an investment analyst or a private wealth manager to be able to spend more time on the things that actually matter. One thing we do know between big data, large language models, small language models, and the ability to process that information is that it opens up a whole new vista of information that you can process and include and augment your decision-making process. So there are so many things that we might have liked to have asked or used in our investment decision-making process, but it was either too expensive or you didn't have access to the data. And now, of course, that's really changing dramatically. I think the other thing is regulators are also deeply concerned about the ethical use of AI. So I think that acts as a bit of a throttle on our business. Really, of the jobs being disrupted dramatically in the short to midterm. And of course, you just don't know what jobs will come out of the ability to use artificial intelligence. We've done a number of research papers, and I'd encourage all of you to look at the Investment Professional of the Future. It's a great paper, gives you an insight into the industry and the kind of skills and qualities that are required. But importantly, we see the equation being HI plus AI, human intelligence plus augmented by and plus artificial intelligence for better investment outcomes, better insights, and better productivity.
Absolutely. So there's this, when we're looking at equity research, so I was just going through some data points where very unique and very different kind of data sets are being used in order to make a forecast in terms of, and possibly taking a bet on a stock, let's say. For example, when you collect GPS data of how many people and how much time is being spent at a Walmart store, let's say, and when you compare it on a quarter-on-quarter basis, before the reports are out, you could use that data and evaluate the percentage increase in the footfall and the time spent in order to forecast what kind of revenue increases could be theirs. But to use that AI or to use that big data, you need human intelligence.
Yeah, so you really do. I mean, I think one of the things we see is what kind of questions are you asking? What are you trying to solve for? So for instance, a hedge fund manager doing arbitrage trading could use the same set of data and come to very different conclusions than a long-term fundamental manager. So as ever, it's really about the questions that you're asking and the thesis that you're forming, because different people will use that information and process it and interpret it very differently depending on what they're trying to achieve.
Right, so you cannot exactly automate it, or because there's a lot of subjectivity involved, there's a lot of forecasting involved, there's a lot of human psychology. We talk about behavioral finance and everything in level 3 curriculum. There's so much of everything that's involved that you cannot possibly come to the same conclusion with the same data set and with the number of variables that's out there to evaluate. Absolutely. So a lot of times we see students focused on very specific profiles like the equity research, investment banking, fund management. But I believe there are 10 subjects when we start with the level 1 curriculum. And there's a much broader coverage when we look at the curriculum. So what are the different set of roles, diverse work profiles, job profiles, startup, entrepreneurial aspects? So what are the different profiles that a candidate would be able to explore with the CFA exams?
So I think, again, almost anything that is analyzing financial information to be able to make some sort of decision, whether it's, are we going to invest in this capital infrastructure project, or are we going to invest in that company? What are we as a company looking at in terms of our own efficiency of capital? Anywhere where that kind of activity is going on, you're going to find charter holders. When we were prepping for this call, I think I said to you in brief, was that I was recently in Texas in the last year. And Texas has this kind of microcosm, having attracted all of these headquarters. So we had an event where, throughout the state, we had several of these, where we invited senior leaders, and they were building out teams for their own companies. And where charter holders were was just incredible. You know, they were in corporate finance, they were in treasury, they were running pensions, they were the classic investment manager, analyst, or portfolio manager. But, you know, really, they were everywhere. And I think that the quality, rigor, and the recognition globally of the CFA charter gives it a distinct advantage and edge. And part of that is that it's a common language and a common framework. So we recently had Ng Kok Sung, who was the original chief investment officer for GIC, the big Singaporean sovereign wealth fund. He said they were building a team with all these different disciplines and all these people from around the world. And this is something we know India has a great talent pool here for in India, but Indians are everywhere in the world. And he said we were bringing all these people together and we needed common framework and common language. And so everybody we hired had their CFA charter or had to be writing their CFA program. I think we forget sometimes that commonality and a standard and quality makes such a difference. And so, you know, I think for candidates that are looking at it, it's a global standard, which is not true for many programs, but you can also think about that when you're promoting yourself to employers.
Right. So when you mentioned the Texas example, it just took me to Young Sheldon for a bit. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yes.
So I was just there for a bit. But yes, so corporate finance does seem to be a very interesting field. So it's basically when you're looking at the finance aspect of a company from either as an outsider, from an equity investment, asset management point of view, or from inside the company, be it from corporate finance or strategy, financial strategy, and looking at the impact of the business decisions on the financials of the company, or with regards to the investment banking space in terms of facilitating any of the transactions and capital raise and anything to do with the capital and the money basically. And as you mentioned, the treasury function, one of my students is working in the Fortune 500 companies and is a part of the core team managing billions of dollars worth of transactions and managing the forex aspect of it. So treasury with the fluctuations in interest rates, it becomes a very interesting space, the fixed income space.
Yeah, fixed income is back, so that's great. It's sort of been, I would say, out of fashion for quite a while. But I think, you know, in this particular market and what we're looking at going forward is myriad asset classes are going to be important. So we've seen infrastructure, real estate, private equity, private credit become much more important parts. The capital allocation decisions, as you rightly pointed out, fixed income has made a pretty big comeback, and of course classic equities. So we're going to probably be more challenged to create the types of returns that we have in the past. That requires better skills and better capabilities. And I think that's where the CFA program really comes in.
And even the alternate investment space is kind of broadening day by day with the different kind of structures and kind of asset classes and all kind of investment opportunities that are coming our way. India, I think we're betting quite a bit on the REITs and InvITs and all. So that's something that's going to be exciting to look at in terms of the volumes coming in terms of the market cap of the equity market in that. So it's very interesting to see the coverage across the finance space. One question I want to ask you is for my students specifically. So when a student is preparing for the CFA exams, what is your advice to them? Anything and everything that you can tell them.
So you won't be surprised. You have to put in the time and effort. Like, it is a really rigorous program, and that's what makes it so prestigious, and that's what employers count on. We have our learning ecosystem, so that's a great way to keep you on track, gives you all kinds of tools in there. One of the things we did with the program was to modularize it. So when I wrote my CFA program, you might have a 150-page chapter on fixed income. But now they're modularized, they're mobile. We did an audit on the language, so to make the language, you know, plainer and more comprehensible. So I think that, you know, you have to put the work in, and of course I think prep providers like yourself can really make a difference. Particularly, there are different ways that people learn, so I think they can make a difference.
Thank you so much. Actually, I, as a prep provider, as a trainer, as a teacher for finance, I really enjoy the connections that I can make between the subjects in the context of finance. So, for example, I'll pick up, let's say, from an economics, macroeconomic policy, where a government comes up with an Ayushman Bharat scheme. So that's about providing health insurance to millions of people in the country. And how would it impact the different sectors within the pharma space, be it the diagnostic space or the hospital space? and then possibly pulling up data and then doing some quant statistic analysis from the quant subject. So the interconnections between the subjects becomes really, really interesting, as how you put together economics and then financial statement analysis, economics and corporate finance and the strategies that the company is taking up. In fact, we've got one new chapter added on business model since last year. So that's also very interesting to see because we've got those SaaS companies and different freemium models and a variety of business models that's out there. So the valuations and all the core concepts become all the more important to understand, because the same, let's say, a dividend discount model, the way you apply to a SaaS company versus the traditional model that used to be there is very, very different. So the application becomes very interesting and it keeps us on our toes as well.
It does. I tell you, it's a lifetime of an interesting career.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Great.
So thank you so much, Marg, for being there and guiding the students as they embark on their journey. And with such a rich experience, I'm sure they're going to be benefiting a lot. So thank you so much for taking the time out, and I hope you're enjoying India.
I am. I am. I will just say India is a very exciting market for us. As a Canadian and somebody who travels around the globe, I see a lot of Indian diaspora around. I think it's an incredibly great market, high education system. It's our #1 market for new level ones, and so I think it's just a delight to be here and to be with you.
India is the place to be.
Yes, I think it is.
And when you mentioned Canadian, I again went back to How I Met Your Mother and Robin. Somehow my mind keeps on wandering. But absolutely a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for doing this.